Welcome to our first step on your yoga journey. We'll be focused in this class on your connection to the floor, the strength of your lower body, and how we connect into the ground. Welcome back. I'm Alison, and this is our class all about the hips. We'll be bringing our attention to your pelvis area, to the place where our legs connect with our torso, an important point in yoga for how we build the shapes that we're going to build throughout this yoga journey together. So draw your attention here to your lowest part of your belly. You might even bring your hands here so that your fingers come about right above your pubic bone. Start to breathe into that space. And it might take some practice, some time to feel the breath start to expand all the way down into the lowest part of your belly. This is your pelvic floor. Over time, it'll feel more comfortable to breathe here. And you can keep your hands here if you like. You can relax them. I'll invite you to close your eyes and start to notice how your breath feels in your body. Keep breathing down into the base of your pelvis. I'll call your attention to two parts of your pelvis called our sits bones, or sometimes called your sitting bones. If you take your hands under the flesh of your seat, and you shift your hips a little side to side, you'll feel a little bony protrusion. These are called your sitting bones or your sits bones. They're a part of your pelvis that sticks out just a little bit and that you can typically feel. Bring those bones to the edge of the blanket you're sitting on, and then release your hands. Feel evenly balanced between your left and right sits bones. As you inhale, imagine that the left and right sit bones are drawing away from one another. As you exhale, imagine them softening back toward one another. Inhale, feel them expanding left to right. Exhale, feel them softening back together. One more like that. Now imagine that your pubic bone and your tailbone are moving away from one another, moving front to back, expanding as you breathe in. And exhaling, pubic bone, tailbone draw toward one another. And keep your breath soft. Take a couple more. Inhaling, expanding front to back. Exhaling, softening back in. One more breath like that. Practicing these breath techniques, we'll start to play with the whole experience. So expanding left to right and front to back. I'll cue you through it. As you inhale, feel your sitting bones reach left and right. Tailbone reaches back, pubic bone reaches forward. And as you exhale, soften everything back in towards your center. Like you're expanding in the circle. Inhale, expand. Exhale, draw it back together. One more, inhaling, expanding. Notice the feeling when you exhale, how there's a little bit of a squeeze there. This is engaging your pelvic floor. Let's actually do two more together so you feel the engagement. Inhale, soften, relax the pelvic floor, opening. And exhale, draw it together, engaging pelvic floor. One more. This doesn't have to be a big movement or a strong contraction or anything like that. We just want to feel that sensation. Let it go. Take a full breath in. Stretch your arms overhead. Exhale, release your right hand to your left knee. Take a simple twist. Pause here. Take a big breath into your nose. Open your mouth. Let it go. Leave your front hand on your front knee. Inhale your back arm up to the sky as you turn your heart back to center. And exhale, hand to opposite knee. Soften your elbows. Lower yourself over your legs. Let your head go heavy. It might feel good to sway a little side to side. Take a full breath. As you inhale, unwind, sweep your arms high to the sky. Exhale, release your hands back behind you. Lean back, cross your other ankle in front. Line your sitting bones up against the edge of your blanket. Shoulders over hips. Inhale, reach. Exhale, take a twist to the other side. Keep the spine long. Inhale the crown of your head toward the sky. And open your mouth. Exhale. Keeping your left hand where it is on your knee. Inhale your back arm up as you start to turn back to face center. And exhale, hand to opposite knee. Soften your elbows. Soften over your legs. Really let your head go heavy. Breathe into your hips. And unwind. Big breath in as you sweep your arms, your gaze to the sky. Exhale, release the hands. Lean back, send your legs out in front of you. Start to bounce the backs of your legs on the mat. Starting to wake up the energy in the lower body. Circle your ankles. Switch direction. Point your toes. Flex your feet. Give them one more shake. And then make your way to all fours. You can cross your ankles and roll there, or you can just slide around. If your wrists need a little more support, you're welcome to double up your mat. And same thing for the knees. If the knees feel like they need a little support, you can double up your mat. You can also bring a blanket underneath them. Take your knees as wide as your hips, or maybe even wider for this class, so that you feel really supported in your hips. Let your pelvis tip toward the ground so that your tailbone reaches toward the sky and you find a little arch in your low back. Keep your upper body more neutral, so just the pelvis moves. Exhale, curl the tailbone toward the floor to curl up toward your hands, rounding low back. Inhale, rocking the pelvis. Tip your tailbone back, 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 up, up, up. And exhale, find that engagement of the pelvic floor as you curl forwards. A little squeeze. Inhale, expand the pelvic floor, opening sitting bones left and right, tipping tailbone back, pelvis forward. And two more like that. Exhale, sitting bones draw together, tailbone curls in, pubic bone draws back as you round. Inhale to soften, expand, just moving the pelvis. Totally fine if the rest of the spine moves a bit, but focusing on the hips. And back to center. Wag your tail side to side. Find a neutral spine. Reach the crown of your head away from your tailbone. Send your hips to the right. Turn and look over your right shoulder. Keep your spine parallel to the ground. Send your hips to the left. Look over left shoulder. It's a little bit of crunch in your side body. One more time. Hips to one side, stretching opposite ribs. And the other. We're finding freedom today in how our hips move. Come back to center. Let the hips sway a little side to side. As you inhale, drop your low belly. This time, arch your whole back. Lift your heart, cow pose. And exhale, slide your hips back to your heels as if you're coming to child's pose. As you inhale, draw your heart forward on the mat, lowering the belly, arching the back, cow pose. Then we'll repeat. Exhale, hips glide back toward child's pose. Really lengthen your breath here. Inhale, draw your heart forward as if you're scooping up. Exhale, long breath. 3, 2, 1. Pause. Inhale, slow slither. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. And exhale back. 3, 2, 1. Pause. Last one. Inhale. 3, 2, 1. Pause in cow pose. Exhale, find neutral spine, neutral pelvis. Wag the tail. Release the hips. Crown of head reaches away from your tailbone. Walk the knees under your hip points so your thigh bones are parallel. Send your back toes to the mat. Press back into your heel. Now at this point in class, switch legs. I'll be offering class on hands and knees on this tabletop position, but you can, as you progress, do this from a downward dog position. So I'll show you what that could look like, and then you can decide any given day what feels best in your energy. So as a reminder, I'll be demonstrating from tabletop a few different movements. You can do the same movements from downward dog. So down dog looks like this: toes tucked under, knees lift, send your hips back to the sky. So you make a triangle with the ground, and then you can do the same movements from there. Take a moment and release the wrists before we go further. Circle them out. Shake them out. Nice big breath in, rise to your knees. Invite in lots of fresh energy and prana before we get going with the next sequence. Release your hands down. Set yourself up in tabletop or downward dog, whatever you choose today. Inhale your right leg up behind you. So leg is lifted off the floor. Flex your foot, pointing toes toward the mat. Bend your knee and roll your right hip over your left. So you're sending right knee toward the sky, right foot behind you toward the left. Maybe you stay here. Maybe you start to lift onto your right fingertips, rotating the heart toward the right. Steady your breath. One more. Really nice work. Hand back to the earth, heart toward the mat. Draw your knee to your nose. Pause so everything's square to the ground. Inhale, send your legs straight up behind you to the sky. As you exhale, take your knee to your right elbow. So knee comes wide, taps right elbow. Inhale, send the leg high behind you. Exhale, left elbow. One more. Inhale, send your leg high. As you exhale, step your foot forward between your hands. Knee stays over that ankle. If your back knee's lifted because you came from downward dog, lower it to the earth. Stay here. Let your pelvis get heavy, almost as if it draws down to the mat and toward the front edge of your mat. Breathing into your hip creases. Inhale, sweep your arms up to the sky. Exhale, bring your hands down inside your right foot. Inch your right foot wider on your mat. Turn your right toes away from your face so your foot's at an angle. You choose the angle, what feels best. And ensure that your knee points over your toes. Hands under the shoulders. Lizard lunge, letting hips grow heavy. Deepening the breath, very important when we start talking about hip opening, because we tend to hold a lot of tension in our hips. Our breath is our signal to our body to soften, to create space to open and relax. Keep your left hand on the floor. Inhale your right hand to your right knee. Use that to help turn the heart to the right. Another option is you could take the right arm to the sky. Whatever feels best for you today, deepen your breath. One more big inhale, maybe arm reaches, lift, expand the heart, and exhale, hand down to the earth, under your shoulders. Engage your core. Front heel is gonna go back to the sky, so either downward dog or tabletop with your right leg lifted. Let's go. Inhale, heel up and back. Exhale, knee to your nose, stabilize your spine, you've got this. And release, big toes together in downward dog or tabletop. If you choose tabletop and you want child's pose, take your knees wide, shift back to your heels. If you choose to stay in downward dog, that's great, or come on down to child's. A couple breaths wherever you are. Coming back to center. Notice the left and right hip. What do you notice here? As you inhale, return to your down dog or your tabletop, wherever you're choosing to be today. Line yourself up, so thigh bones parallel. Spine long wherever you are, tailbone to crown of head. Nice one long line. Inhale, float your left leg up behind you. Take a moment to get settled here. We've added an element of balance. Flex your foot. Bend your knee, heel toward your seat. Roll your left hip over your right. So left foot comes toward the ground behind you. Not all the way to the ground, but over to the right side. Left knee lifting. For a little more space, you might come up onto fingertips, Spider-Man hands in the left hand for some lift. Exhale, palm back down, draw your knee to your nose, heart to center, pause. Inhale, leg up to the sky behind you. Exhale, knee to left elbow. Flowing with our breath, send the leg high. Right elbow, breathe out. Inhale all the way up. Step your foot forward, bring it between your hands. Back knee to the earth. Let your pelvis grow heavy. Let it melt toward the front edge of the mat. And deepen the breath here in your low lunge. We talked about tension in the hips and breathing into it. Another really interesting fact is tension in the jaw is related to tension in the hips. So relax the jaw, separate the upper and lower jaw, see if that creates a little space for you. As you inhale, rise up, sweep your arms high. Exhale, hands inside your front foot. Prepare for lizard lunge. Walk your left toes out. Turn the toes, maybe at an angle there. Feels good. Pointing in the same direction as your knees. Hands under your shoulders. And again, surrendering into breath. You might find that swaying a little in your lizard lunge feels good. Feel free to explore some movement. Rocking side to side if that feels good today. Another breath here. Leaning into your right hand, lift your left hand to your thigh. You might want to turn your toes out a little further, whatever feels good, so that you can start opening your heart to the left. Option to also sweep that top arm to the sky, depending on what feels good today. One more big breath in. And exhale, release the hands. Heart and hips face the mat, engage your core. Send your left heel to the sky behind you. Exhale, knee to nose. And release the feet together, either downward dog or child's pose. A few breaths again to check in with how you feel. Sway your hips here a little side to side if that feels good. Walking the hands back towards your feet. Bringing your heels together, toes to the mat, toes apart. So as heels come together, you'll see that your knees can open out side to side. So we'll all meet here in our yogi squat. Knees open wide. Hands can support you on the mat. If you're feeling like you want a little balance challenge, you could try elbows inside the knees, palms together, using the pressure of your palms together to draw the knees away from one another with the elbows. This is Malasana, or yogi squat. Really great way to get into the hips. If it's feeling like too much today, you can also sit your hips on a block in Malasana. So I'll show you exactly how that looks here. 1 or 2 blocks. Just setting your pelvis there for a little stability to open the hips. One more tip on Malasana. I've suggested heels together. Doesn't mean it's the only way. You could separate your feet if that feels a little more supportive, maybe as wide as your mat. Couple different options. Take one more breath as you breathe into the inside of your hips, your inner thighs. And hands to the mat. Crawl your hands out all the way back to the front of the mat. Draw your feet together in plank pose. You can be on your toes in plank, or you can be on your knees, shoulders over wrists. And in plank, in this version of plank, can you find a little freedom? So sometimes we take plank and we hold stillness and we press really strong. And this one, soften your elbows a little bit, micro bend. Let your belly be a little soft. Let your hips sway side to side. Relax your jaw. So I call this flowy plank, finding a little fluidity. It doesn't mean it's easier. Your muscles are still working. We're just exploring what it looks like to give ourselves permission to move around a bit. We'll keep this rocking going, maybe a little more left to right. Shift your weight over to the right and pause. Roll onto the outer edge of your right foot. Option for right knee on the mat or lifted. And maybe you want to sweep left arm to the sky, side plank. Keep it soft. Exhale, left hand down. Shift over to the other side. Soft elbow, soft belly, little flowy openness. And exhale back to center. Lower your knees. Take them wide. Shift your hips to child's pose. Release the arms alongside your legs, relaxing the shoulders. Let your head come to the earth. Might feel good to sway the hips side to side. Often our pelvis can get a little locked up. We don't tend to move it a lot. So that's why I'm encouraging movement here in this class to create a sense of freedom, openness in the joints. Hands to the mat. Press yourself up to a seat. You can stay here, thighs parallel to one another on your knees. This is hero's pose, Vajrasana. Sometimes it doesn't feel good on the knees, so you can do a couple things. You can come to cross-legged, or if you like Vajrasana and just need a little more support, you can bring a blanket behind your thighs. You can also sit on a block, which is my preferred method. So taking your block on its widest width, bring it between your ankles, and that will let you lower your pelvis to sit on the block. Bring your hands to your hips. Let's find a little bit of those pelvic rocks again. Bump your tailbone back, and then rounding, curl your tailbone towards your knees. Use your hands to feel how it feels to rock your pelvis. A couple times. This is a little bit like a baby cat-cow that's happening just at the base of your spine in your pelvis. Can you find a neutral place for your pelvis here? Somewhere between those two extremes. Feel your lower abdominals zip up to hold you tall. Proud, lifted heart. As you inhale, open your arms out like the letter T, stretching the chest. Inhale, sweep your arms to the sky. And exhale, right hand to left knee, simple twist. Left hand can find the ground if it's accessible, or hold your left hip. Nice deep breath. Inhale, come back to the sky, sweep your arms out and up. Other side, exhale. Maybe hand to right hip or the floor. Take a long breath. Inhale back through center. One more reach up to the sky. Maybe rising to your knees if that feels good. Exhale, hands to your low back, like you're putting them in your pockets. Your hands are here to help your tailbone and your pelvis feel supported. As you inhale, imagine lifting your ribs up away from your pelvis, gently drawing elbows toward one another so you get a stretch across your chest. This is what I call baby camel pose. No need for it to be intense, just a bit of a stretch. And release, come out of it. If you have a block or a blanket, remove it from underneath you. Shift around to come down to your back. Lying down on the mat, draw your knees into your heart. Take a full breath. Imagine that you're drawing little circles on the ground with your tailbone. Thighs into your chest. Tiny circles to massage your low back. Perch your hands on your kneecaps. So they just sit there like little bird feet perched on your knees. As you inhale, press your knees away from you. Feel your tailbone pressing into the mat. Feel your low back lifting off the mat. Very slow movements. As you exhale, bend your elbows. Start to draw your thighs in toward you, leaving some space between the low back and the mat. So these are micro movements. Inhaling to straighten the arms. Moving slow is a healing way to bring fresh prana, life force, energy, blood, and oxygen to the tissues that need it. One more round, nice and slow. Separating your knees. Take hold of your calves, your shins, or your ankles, and open your feet. So bent eyes drawing toward the mat outside your body. Happy baby. One more full breath. When you're ready, draw your thighs together. Give yourself another hug. And release your legs long on the mat. Take your heels about as wide as your mat. Snuggle your shoulder blades gently into the earth. Bring your hands to your belly or your hip points. Feel that bony part of your pelvis, the hip bones you feel on the front of your hips. I like hands there for a sense of grounding. You're not pressing yourself into the earth, but just holding the hands there so the pelvis feels permission to soften. Inhale for 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, 3, 2, 1. Exhale, 3, 2, 1. Relax, control of your breath. Settle in for your Shavasana. Stay here as long as you can, working your way up over time to 5, 10, 15 minutes in Shavasana. Thank you for practicing with me. Have a great rest of your day.